Yeah, press the go live button. Would help, wouldn't it? Oh, right. We press the go live button now. So we should be rocking and rolling. Good morning, everyone. Where are we? 24th of June, 2026. Ready for Prime Minister's question time. On Monday this week, Keir Starmer announced that he would resign and he'll be stepping down, I believe, on the 7th of July. If anyone wants to correct me, please feel free. I'm only human. We do get things wrong. But it's 30 degrees here, just north of London. It's fucking hot. Well, it has been last few days. So, excuse me if I don't speak too much. I'm struggling, mate. I'm struggling, to be honest. But good morning, everyone. Good morning, Spawn, Jojo, Lynn. Hope everyone's well. Was going to say, one thing. All right. Now, it has to do with YouTube. Okay. Now, this is not bullshit. This is absolutely, I don't do bullshit, as you know. If you follow me, you know I don't do bullshit. Okay. But YouTube sees a live stream that I've done and it say has 500 views and it's got 40 likes. YouTube looks at them figures and goes, well, maybe people didn't like it then. Yeah. Maybe people didn't like it. So YouTube won't push that video for me. We all say, please hit that like button. It is important for me as a content creator because I'm not an influencer. I'm not an auditor. I create content. All right. That's all I'm going to say about it. Blah, blah, blah. I'll shut up now. I need another coffee. Hope everyone's well and everybody is keeping cool. I hope I just didn't say that for nothing. I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Diane. Good morning, Lucy. Hope everyone is well. So, let me know in the comments now in the live chat. Is Starmer going to actually be there? Is he going to be there? What do you reckon? I reckon he'd be there, but he'd be like sheepish, wouldn't he? I hope. Well, Nicola, good morning. Don't reckon he's going to be there, eh? Yes, okay. Right. Oh, it looks like they're fucking getting going for once. Are they starting early? No, they're not. They're getting me at it. Right, let's do that, that, and that. Sorry, I'm just adjusting things so to give it the best viewing experience for the audience, you know, because we do try our best and we do cock up every now and then. We're only human. At least I admit to my mistakes, unlike Mr. Starmer. There you go. Right. How is everyone? Who's hit the like button already? Come on. Who's hit the like button? Put your hands up. Give us a thumbs up if you've hit that like button, please. Well, the pavement incident was, oh God. Bear's come to join the party. If you don't know Bear, the guard dog. Vanessa, good morning, love. How are you? Jet Black, welcome along. We're on subscribe out only mode this morning. All right. Guru, morning. Hope everyone's well. Right. I'm gonna put you over onto the screen. All right. Yeah, morning always just joining. I can't see how many are in at the moment. I don't know. But we go over to the scene in a second, to the live feed. Okay, now. Jesus. Well, 42 people passed away yesterday in France due to the heat. Different related incidents, I believe, but stay safe out there, everybody. I know we're all trying to keep cool and everything, but safety is priority. I'm not going to be the health and safety official on this. All right. Okay, let's go over. I'm going to go over. Because I'm just going to nip out to the kitchen and grab another coffee.
Order. Motion to the post return. Minister to move. The question is, we now come to questions. Questions, Secretary of State for Women and Equality, Sarah Coombs.
Number one, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trans people deserve to live their lives with dignity, respect and without shame. This government is committed to protecting and advancing the rights of trans people, including equalising hate crime legislation, delivering a trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices and improving gender healthcare services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently spoke to a trans woman at my coffee morning. She was in tears as she feels that life for trans people in Britain has gone backwards. She was always able to live and work in peace and dignity, but feels her right to do that is being severely impacted, and she's very worried about her chances of getting new jobs because of the EHRC guidance on things like toilets. Can the Minister reassure me and my constituent that this government will fight to protect the rights of trans people in Britain?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm so sorry to hear from my honourable friend about the experience of her constituent, and I really do recognise how much anxiety there is in the trans community at the moment. And I'd like to be really clear that trans people's rights against discrimination and harassment are protected in law, a fact that was underlined in the Supreme Court judgment. I'd also like to be clear that this government is committed to defending and extending the rights of trans people in this country, including equalising hate crime law, improving healthcare and our trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the Supreme Court judgment, and even more so since the Code of Practice, my constituents who identify as trans are contacting me daily. One has told me he feels entirely pushed out of public life and has had to leave his job due to customer harassment, and says finding a new job is nigh on impossible. Can I ask whether the Minister perceives this to be an intended or an unintended consequence of the draft guidance, and will they please give us the opportunity to vote on it in Parliament?
Mr. Speaker, I've said how much I recognise the significant anxiety that is felt by some in the trans community at the moment, and I really do. I would like to be really clear that the Supreme Court was extremely clear that trans people's rights, protections against discrimination and harassment are protected in law, and the government will defend and extend trans people's rights. On the question of the draft Code of Practice, it's before the House for scrutiny, and members can apply for additional debates if they wish.
Rebecca Smith.
Speaker, the inaugural Jewish Culture Month... Sorry, question number 2.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the rise in anti-Semitism is unacceptable and has no place in Britain, and it requires a whole-of-society response. That is why we are strengthening policing and investing in a record protective security funding to keep Jewish communities safe. We are also clamping down on anti-Semitic extremism, tackling anti-Semitism in schools and universities, ensuring arts councils withdraw funding from those promoting anti-Semitism, and accepting all the recommendations from Lord Mann's review into anti-Semitism and racism in the health service.
Rebecca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer. The inaugural Jewish Culture Month has just concluded, with more than 100 events taking place across the country to celebrate Jewish culture, community and creativity. In Plymouth, for example, the Plymouth Jewish community partnered with the Klezmer Village Band to bring traditional Jewish music to local schools and to Plymouth Theatre Royal, helping to share Jewish culture with wider audience. Now, given that the Prime Minister believes that rooting out anti-Semitism is a highlight of his tenure, I wonder what support the Minister was able to show for Jewish Culture Month and whether she attended any events.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question, and she will, I'm sure, speak for the whole House in recognising the importance of celebrating and sharing Jewish culture and why this month has been so important. She may also be aware that an event was held in the Department for Education and that we will leave no stone unturned in tackling anti-Semitism, because there is it is absolutely committed from all sides of this House. No person from the Jewish community should feel they have to change their way of life or change what they wear in order to be safe.
Growth Snell.
Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Minister's comments that no Jewish persons have to change what they wear or how they go about their life to be Jewish, but she will also know that is exactly what is happening in this country, not least because anti-Semitism is perpetrated online by vile hate-mongers who seem to think that attacking Jewish people is fair game. So can she tell me what action she's taking to make sure that those people online who pump out the anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred are brought to bear very quickly?
I thank my honourable friend, and he makes an incredibly important point, and he is absolutely right that this hate and abuse must also be tackled online. It is why the Online Safety Act also contains robust provisions to protect people from online abuse. And we have also ended the era of self-regulation by enforcing strict legal duties that compel platforms to design out racial hatred and protect users. It is vital that this work continues and that we step up active enforcement programmes that have been also underway since March last year.
Jessica Toll.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Minister. Well.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I will answer questions 3, 9 and 11 together. We have made the landmark commitment to halve violence against women and girls in a decade, and we have already been delivering domestic abuse specialists in 999 call centres, specialist rape and sexual offences investigation units in our police, £16 million for programmes in schools on healthy relationships and tackling harmful behaviour. Our ambition is clear, but there is much more work to do.
Jessica Toll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that the most dangerous place for a woman is often her own home. That is in part why I've brought forward a private member's bill to extend domestic abuse protections to children and to young people who they themselves may be in abusive relationships. So can the Minister tell me what more this government is doing to tackle the scourge of domestic violence?
My honourable friend is right. The least safe place for women is far too often in her own home, and children who witness or experience abuse in their homes are victims in their own right. This government is determined to tackle domestic abuse. We are putting domestic abuse specialists in 999 call centres. Prosecutions are rising, and domestic abuse protection orders can provide unlimited duration protection and are already protecting over 1,000 victims. I welcome her commitment to legislating to protect children and young people caught in abusive relationships, and I look forward to working with her on her private member's bill.
Conor Rand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Suicides caused by domestic violence are growing at such a rate that a woman in an abusive relationship is now more likely to take her own life than be killed by her partner. Yet we know there is a significant underreporting of such cases, and criminal accountability for the men responsible is all too rare. So could the Minister update the House on what the government is doing to tackle this crisis and bring the men that drive women to end their own lives to justice?
I am grateful to the honourable member for raising this important matter. Where domestic abuse drives a woman to take her own life, that is a profound tragedy and an injustice, and perpetrators must be held to account. Those who drive their partners to take their own lives can face prosecution under existing manslaughter and encouraging suicide offences. The government have asked the Law Commission to conduct a wholesale review of the law of homicide and the sentencing framework for murder. This will include a review of the use of and any obstacles to the use of manslaughter charges where abuse may have driven someone to suicide. We recognise that there is more to do, particularly in better understanding and preventing suicides linked to domestic abuse. And we will continue to work with experts, frontline services and campaigners to strengthen our response.
Alison New.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The member for Runcorn and Helsby embarrassed herself and this House when she said that the England football team needed to keep winning to keep women safe from domestic abuse. Does the allows perpetrators to avoid accountability for their horrific actions?
I completely agree with my honourable friend. Domestic abuse is not caused by football results. It's caused by perpetrators who make a choice to abuse women. Refuge, Women's Aid and other specialist organisations are clear that suggesting otherwise allows abusers to deflect responsibility and avoid accountability. This government is clear that there is no excuse, no context and no mitigating circumstances that make domestic abuse acceptable. And I hope that the member for Runcorn will reflect on the harm that that kind of framing causes to victims.
Sir Roger Gale.
Does the Minister agree with me that it is iniquitous that at least one of the doctors responsible for the intrusive examination of young women prior to their rape and sexual abuse by Mohammed Fayed is still practising in London? And if she does, would she approach the General Medical Council and ask them why?
The scourge of abuse, whoever commits it, is something that we must root out. And it is absolutely the case that we need to see that across all professions. And the violence against women that programme that we have got, that we are committed to being able to halve violence against women and girls, includes ensuring that we need to be looking at healthcare settings as well as everywhere else. And I would be certainly happy to meet with the honourable member to discuss it further.
We're a Hobhouse.
I recently hosted a roundtable with leading organisations in the woke sector to discuss a vile trend of men filming degrading videos of women enjoying a night out and accompanying that with absolutely awful strap lines. The former minister, before she resigned, was committed to have a meeting with me to discuss solutions before she resigned. I know the political situation is currently a little bit fluid, but can she make sure that her department takes this very seriously? And I will have a meeting with her department to discuss solutions, please.
I thank the honourable member for her question, and we are committed to tackling violence against women and girls, whether it happens on the street or in people's homes or online. And I would be happy to meet with her, specifically in relation to the online harms that we see and the abuse that we see online. We have criminalised the creation of non-consensual, not just deep fakes, but we are also banning nudification tools, and we're putting a legal duty on platforms to remove non-consensual intimate images within 48 hours. There is more we can do, and I'd be happy to meet with my honourable friend.
Ms Giles.
Speaker, my constituent Parish Shears was subjected to domestic abuse, including coercive control, by her former partner. During his trial, he changed his plea to receive a shorter sentence. Paris has achieved over 100,000 signatures on her parliamentary petition to change the law. Does the Minister agree with me that the victims of domestic abuse, including coercive control, deserve better?
Our police receive calls in relation to domestic violence every 30 seconds, and it's absolutely right, whether it's from our police or through our courts or with the victim services that they need, that victims of domestic violence need to be treated with much better action. And that is what this government is implementing, not only through the action we're taking on 999 call centres and having domestic abuse specialists, but also in the domestic abuse protection orders and so much more that we know is needed for victims of domestic abuse.
So, Secretary of State, Ms Davies.
Yes. As a 16-year-old, Kate worked a summer at Harrods, and in 2024 she told her story of being raped at work. Intimate medical examinations were carried out on women by senior Harrods staff, and security silenced hundreds of women's attacks. Mr. Speaker, how can the Justice for Fired and Harrods survivors get heard? I met some of those brave women this week. How will they get the whole truth, justice and systemic change if the Met Police inquiry remains stalled? Enablers, as we heard, including some women, are left at large, and incredibly, over 500 victims still need answers.
I've met with victims in relation to the Al Fayed campaign and with campaigners, as has the Prime Minister. And it is clear that we need to ensure that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, that there is always justice, and I look forward to continuing to work with campaigners to ensure that they get justice.
Ria Goldman, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government's recently announced under-16 social media ban will play an important role in tackling violence against women and girls and the online spread of misogyny. But social media bans by themselves are not enough. While we welcome steps to address online harm, the government's proscriptive approach simply won't be enough. New platforms and apps will continue to spring up, yet the government is in danger of being a dangerously outpaced competitor in an online game of whack-a-mole. So, alongside legislation, we urgently need to give our parents, our teachers and our schools the tools they need to ensure that when children come across harmful or inappropriate content, they are equipped to recognise, to challenge it and to ultimately be kept safe from it. So will the Secretary of State work with her education colleagues to ensure that teachers have the resources and the support within the curriculum to cover this?
My honourable friend is right that we need to not just be pursuing perpetrators and providing support to victims, but we need to prevent violence against women and girls as well, and that is why the strategy is a cross-government. It is no one department that can tackle this, and education is not only ensuring that we are piloting programmes with young people in their schools, but we need to ensure that every department is doing their bit, as they are.
Julia Mims.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, conversion practices are an abhorrent and insidious form of abuse, perpetrated by people who believe that being LGBT is not only wrong, but that it can be forcibly changed. This government, Mr. Speaker, will ban this abuse.
The work of Pride in Cumbria and Pride in North Cumbria in supporting people to feel accepted and confident in their sexuality stands in stark contrast to those who peddle cruel and abusive conversion practices. The last Conservative government failed multiple times to introduce a ban on these practices. Will the Minister please confirm that this government will legislate, and will she set out the steps that the government is taking to do this?
Mr Speaker, I'd like to thank Pride in North Cumbria and Cumbria Pride for their brilliant work. And my honourable friend is right to say that Pride events are a wonderful asset to the community. And given recent decisions to defund Pride events, this is a lesson I think reform councils clearly need to learn. Mr Speaker, I can confirm that this Labour government will ban abusive conversion practices and that we'll be publishing our draft bill very soon.
Jim Shannon.
Mr Speaker, and ever mindful of the answers that the Honourable Lady has asked and the Minister has responded, what protection has the Minister put in place for those who actively and honestly seek help and prayerful support and who are seeking guidance in churches and through Christian groups as well as through faith-based groups? It's always important to have people have an opportunity. I know the Minister will be committed to that. I'll be very pleased to have her answer. Thank you.
I thank him for his question, and I do look forward to discussing this matter further with him when we have published our draft bill. But let me be very clear, Mr Speaker. What we're talking about here is criminalising abuse that should happen to nobody, anywhere, in any situation or any setting.
Sue Williams.
Question number 5, please, Mr Speaker.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer questions 5 and 10 together. Tackling child poverty is a moral mission for this Labour government. Background should not determine what you go on to achieve in life, but we know that inequality and poverty hold back too many of our children. We're improving life chances for every child, from scrapping the 2-child limit, rolling out free childcare, Best Start family hubs, free breakfast clubs and expanding free school meals. And our child poverty strategy will deliver the largest reduction in child poverty in a single parliament. This is the difference a Labour government is making.
David Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Stoke-on-Trent and Kidsgrove, literacy levels of our children and young people fall behind the England average, and that can severely impact a young person's future earnings. Our libraries play a key role, yet reform-led Staffordshire County Council has ordered them to remove Pride displays.
Shameful.
Does the Secretary of State agree that libraries should be inclusive and welcoming to all, and children and young people should never be placed at the centre of such divisive culture wars?
Mr Speaker, I completely agree with my honourable friend. The joy of reading should be open to every child, and that is really important in this National Year of Reading. Local libraries are special places, and reform should be investing in our libraries so that children can access them, not shutting down displays that make all families feel welcome. But, Mr Speaker, this is sadly characteristic of a party who, in my own local area, let back in a councillor who said that Nigerians should be melted down to fill in potholes. Not fit for power at any level.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We know that the attainment gap holds back children who grow up in poverty, and that reached its highest levels under the Tories. And in Scotland, the SNP have failed to close the gap. Does the Minister agree with me that it's shameful, therefore, that the Tories' only policies for children are bringing back the 2-child limit, plunging hundreds of thousands back into poverty, and bringing back tax breaks for private schools?
Mr Speaker, I am proud of the record of the last Labour government in tackling child poverty, but this Labour government is going even further. We will lift the largest number of children out of poverty in a single parliament ever, in sharp contrast to the party opposite, who would plunge 500,000 children back into poverty.
We come to topicals. Andrew George.
Question 1, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, the Equality Act 2010 is a monumental achievement passed by the last Labour government. It protects everyone from discrimination and harassment, and the public sector equality duty makes our services fairer for everyone. And we're bolstering this by commencing the socio-economic duty. Mr Speaker, the Equality Act is our quiet guardian, the law that stops bosses overlooking pregnant qualified workers for promotion. It means that shops and transport must adapt for wheelchair users, making their services accessible. And to those who want to dismantle those protections, I say, we will not let them turn back the clock. We stand by these rights. We will strengthen them.
Andrew George.
Mr Speaker, I've given the Ministers advance notice of this question. Can Ministers do more to better coordinate support across government for women and child victims? My constituent Caroline Eshe, abuser, was granted a lenient sentence because the abuse occurred before 2005. And my constituent Tina Nash who was beaten, assaulted and blinded now feels insufficiently protected and supported because from either the parole board or the victim contact scheme. Can government ministers please do more to support them?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman who raises two incredibly powerful and distressing cases. I want to share with him my sympathy for those affected, for all that they have been through, for the harm that they suffered. And I'd be more than happy to discuss it further with him or to make sure a minister meets with him to hear his constituents' views.
Jane Kirkland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The EHRC guidelines were to provide clarity. However, washing facilities adaptations will be difficult and costly for businesses, and providers like guides risk potentially being sued for being inclusive. Small, vulnerable minorities do need our protection. How will the Secretary of State monitor the impact of the guidance on trans and disabled people to ensure they're not left without services and they're not scared to go out?
I thank my honourable friend for this important question, and I would just say to her the code is clear that nobody should be left without the services that they need, and the EHRC is clear that they will be monitoring the impact of the code.
Secretary of State Claire Coutinho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government's Islamophobia definition is already being weaponised to shut down free speech, just as I warned it would. South Wales Police tried to use it to effectively criminalise people for criticising Islam, something that ministers promised us time and again would not happen. Does the Secretary of State understand how divisive this is, and if so, will she finally withdraw this dangerous definition?
Mr. Speaker, South Wales Police have paused their plans. It is right that they have done so. There are no blasphemy laws in this country. But it is right that we take action against hatred, prejudice and racism wherever we find it. And we have seen shocking examples of where Muslims in our country have been targeted on the basis of their faith and because of who they are. And we need look no further than the Shadow Justice Secretary, who engaged in appalling racism towards Muslims in our country and rather shamefully was not sacked by the Leader of the Opposition for those comments.
Claire Coutinho.
Mr. Speaker, asking officers to record examples of illegitimate criticism of Islam is nothing short of an assault on free speech. So let me try another issue. Last night, Labour MPs voted to give children as young as 11 powerful puberty-blocking drugs that could leave them infertile for the rest of their lives. She is the Cabinet Minister for Children. She knows that children in the care system are overrepresented in this group. This cannot sit right with her. So will she do the right thing and tell the Health Secretary to stop the puberty-blocking trial?
Mr. Speaker, when Dr. Hilary Cass published her review, we endorsed all of those recommendations, as did the party opposite. And an important part of what Dr. Cass set out was that it is essential that healthcare is available to children and young people who are experiencing gender dysphoria or incongruence, but that it must be safe, evidence-based and clinically appropriate. We have always been clear about the red lines regarding the MHRA's trial and the prescription of puberty blockers, and the safety and well-being of children must be at the forefront of everything that we do. But the review by Dr. Cass did conclude that whilst not enough was known about the safety of puberty-suppressing hormones, it was necessary to take forward a trial.
We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. Clive Jones.
Question number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by saying my thoughts are with all those injured in the rail collision last Friday. I was deeply saddened to learn of the death of the driver of the Corby to St Pancras train. His family have requested privacy, and we should all respect that. I send my deepest sympathies to them at this awful time. My thoughts are also with those injured in the appalling attack in Edinburgh, which appears to be motivated by anti-Muslim hatred. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear, in this country, an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. We will not stand for it, and the perpetrator will face the full force of the law. let me commend our emergency services who responded to both incidents with outstanding bravery and professionalism in very difficult circumstances. Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest privileges of leading this country is meeting our armed forces, celebrating their work and marking Armed Forces Week. And I want to thank them all for their dedication, their courage and sacrifice to protect our way of life. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. I shall have further such meetings later today. Not today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks? Prime Minister, the National Cancer Plan is something that your government can be really proud of. Cancer patients in Wokingham and across the country cannot afford for it not to be implemented or regularly updated. Will the Prime Minister leave a lasting legacy and support my Cancer Private Members Bill to ensure that future governments remain accountable for delivering its targets and ambitions?
Well, can I first recognise his personal experience and pay tribute to his campaign? I'm incredibly proud of the National Cancer Plan, which sets out how we're ending the postcode lottery with more cancer specialists, paying the travel costs of children travelling for cancer care, and investing in technology to drive research into rare cancers. Thanks to our record investment in the NHS, we've the shortest waits for cancer diagnosis on record. He'll be pleased to know that in his constituency, waiting lists in his local care board are down by 40,000. That's thanks to a Labour government and Labour decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Max Hall is 14 years old. He should be worrying about school, football, friends and what he wants to be when he grows up. Instead, he is living with a high-grade brain tumour and there is no cure available to him. His parents, Jackie and Stephen, want to know, why are children still being diagnosed with brain tumours and told there's no treatment options available? Why has brain tumour research remained so underfunded when brain tumours kill more children and adults under 40 than any other cancer? And why are families like them left to search for hope themselves? This Prime Minister has done so much to strengthen our NHS. So does he agree with me that we need to move at pace and do much more to offer hope to Max and his family and families like his facing this unequally devastating disease?
Can I just say my thoughts, and I'm sure the thoughts of the whole House, are with Max and his family in what must be the most awful of circumstances. Through our Cancer Trials Accelerator programme, we'll make it easier to launch innovative new clinical trials and find new treatment. And for people like Max, that will mean make young people's cancer a research priority, make clinical trials more accessible, and pay for his travel costs for care. I hope that comes as some comfort, but as a parent, I can't imagine what his family are going through, given the circumstances that he faces. And I know that a minister would be happy to meet Max and his family.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Bednall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate this side of the House with the Prime Minister's remarks on the horrific train crash, the attacks in Edinburgh, and, of course, Armed Forces Week? I want to start by congratulating the Prime Minister. He's the other party leader who won a by-election last week. Although I think I'm much happier with my new MP than he is with his. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister told the House that the government was funding defence and everything was under control. The very next day, the Defence Secretary resigned, saying the Prime Minister was unable and the Treasury unwilling to fund the defence of our country. What changed?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she references the by-election. I'm very pleased with our new Member of Parliament. Can I also say to her, in Gorton and Denton, the Tories got 1.9% of the vote. Can I congratulate her, because in Makerfield, they got 2.2% of the vote. Just edging past Count Binface. She says they're winning everywhere. At that rate, it'll take them 500 years to get back into power. Mr. Speaker, meanwhile, back on these benches, we've delivered the biggest sustained boost to defence spending since the 1980s. That's £270 billion over this Parliament. That, Mr. Speaker, is a record. The Defence Investment Plan will take that even higher. That's about facing the future. We'll finalise the plan with the Defence Secretary and we'll have it published before the NATO summit.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister forgot to mention that in Aberdeen South we got 50%. And he says that he's funding defence. The truth is, he wouldn't be in this mess if his Chancellor had found money for the Defence Investment Plan. The Prime Minister gave her the second most important job in Britain. She was the first female Chancellor. She lives next door to him, but wouldn't even come out to stand by him during his resignation speech. She was too busy getting ready for a selfie with the new leader. Does the Prime Minister feel let down by his Chancellor?
This is the Chancellor who ended austerity inflicted on our country for 14 long years. This is the Chancellor who got the economy growing, Mr. Speaker. She doesn't normally want to talk about the economy. That's because in the first quarter of this year, the UK had the fastest growing economy in the G7. Our growth was upgraded by the IMF and the OECD. Last week, unemployment was down. Inflation was better than better. That is because with this chance we have the right economic plan and we can weather the global storms in the war that she wanted to jump into.
Mr. Speaker, they're cheering so loudly. If it's all going so fine, why is he resigning? The fact is, she did let him down. She's the one who snatched the winter fuel payments. She's the one who announced a disastrous budget that killed economic growth. And because of her, once again, a Labour Prime Minister is leaving office with unemployment higher than when he came in. But the Chancellor isn't the only person who let him down. The Energy Secretary is putting up bills and killing jobs. He was, he's not here, is he? He was a failed Labour leader, rejected by the electorate, brought back from the wilderness by this man, and when the going got tough, he jumped into bed with the Mayor of Manchester. It's not the first time he's betrayed someone close to him, is it? But does the Prime Minister think that this treachery should be rewarded by being appointed Chancellor?
Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor and I picked up our party 6 years ago from the worst defeat since 1935. We turned it around and we made it face the country. And we won a landslide general election, giving them the biggest drubbing in their history. To this Chancellor, we've delivered the fastest fall in NHS waiting list for 17 years. We've the money for new rights for renters and working people, and we're lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. Mr. Speaker, the test for every Prime Minister is handing over the country in better shape than you found it. I know I can do that, which is more than can be said for her predecessor, her predecessor's predecessor, and her predecessor's predecessor's predecessor.
Mr. Speaker, once again I have to ask, if it's all so fantastic, why is he resigning? And I think it is very generous of the Prime Minister to stick by his ministers because they didn't stick by him. He can say what he likes, but the people of Aberdeen gave their verdict. They gave their verdict on his Energy Secretary by voting Conservative. But to be fair, Mr. Speaker, to be fair, they're not all traitors and deserters. Some of his cabinet have been loyal and incompetent. Hands up if you think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job, Mr. Speaker. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job. Someone did. Just for those who raised their hands, the two people who raised their hands, yesterday a poll found that 0% of teachers think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. 0%. She taxed private schools to pay for more teachers, but the number of teachers has gone down. Yeah. It turns out appointing a spiteful class warrior as Education Secretary was a disaster. Yeah. Does the Prime Minister agree Does the Prime Minister agree that he has been let down by her incompetence?
Prime Minister. The Education Secretary grew up in poverty. She knows exactly what it means to grow up in poverty. She was once reluctant to tell her story. I know her story. It's an incredible story of social mobility and success. I am so proud that she is sitting there, and so should everybody in this country who cares about social mobility. She knows that for poor children, education is absolutely vital, and that is why it drives every single priority and value that she has. I would have thought the party opposite would recognise and understand some of that, but they've fallen so low they don't.
Mr. Speaker, the fact is that if she knew so much about poor children, she wouldn't have given them fewer teachers. Teacher numbers have gone down. Teacher numbers have gone down. It's amazing. I've never seen this much excitement on the Labour benches. Yes, cheering so loudly while there are 400 knives stuck in his back. Shame on them. Shame on them. They don't like it up them, but they know that what I'm saying is true. And Mr. Speaker, there were times when the Prime Minister tried to do the right thing. He did try to cut welfare. And who stopped him? Those MPs behind him. In the words of the Welfare Secretary, his MPs only want to know who they can tax to fund more benefits. They are not Labour MPs, they are welfare MPs. Does the Prime Minister feel betrayed by the people he got into Parliament?
Sorry, Prime Minister. Can I just say, let us think about the language we're using. I think that'll be the first to leave, please. Can I just say, think about the language we're using, because when we leave this chamber, don't be surprised when constituents feel they can use the same language against each other. Let us show a little bit more decorum and respect to each other. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was trying to do all of this with as much good grace as I could, but I shall certainly miss these exchanges. I'm very proud of every one of our MPs who, with a landslide Labour victory, coming from all different backgrounds, from all different places across the country. We inflicted the biggest loss on the Tory party opposite in the history of their party. We picked up our party, we turned it around. We had to address what went wrong. We turned it around. We won a landslide victory. She won't even address or even talk about their failure after 14 long years.
Mr. Speaker, he is the one who is resigning because of his MPs. There's no point trying to distract from it. And let's be honest, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has made many mistakes. Otherwise, he wouldn't be going. But he has also been let down. I'm only saying what his staff have been briefing. He has been let down by an energy secretary who is killing industry, let down by a chancellor who is killing jobs, let down by backbenchers who don't understand that government is about tough choices. He U-turned again and again and again to appease them, and now they've abandoned him. And what for? A pair of eyelashes and a black T-shirt. Isn't the truth that whoever is in charge, Mr. Speaker, isn't the truth that whoever is in charge, the real problem is the Labour Party?
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, I walked into Number 10 and found a broken economy, broken public services and broken trust in politics. Because of our decisions, my decision, the country is moving in the right direction, a stronger and a fairer Britain, ending austerity, investing in our public services, the fastest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years, more rights for workers, more rights for renters, standing with Ukraine, Britain's reputation restored and 500,000 children being lifted out of poverty. Change promised by a Labour government, fought for by a Labour government, change delivered by a Labour government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My Hendon constituency is proud to sit at the heart of the UK's largest Jewish community in the London Borough of Barnet. But today, many of my constituents, many of that community, are living in fear. In northwest London, in recent months, we have seen Jewish charities firebombed, synagogues attacked, Jewish people stabbed in the street, and all that against the backdrop of a daily drumbeat of abuse and intimidation. I know everyone on these benches is determined to defeat this despicable hatred, and I welcome the actions the government is taking to root out the poison of our anti-Semitism. Can the Prime Minister tell this House what the government is doing, not only to protect the Jewish community in Hendon and Barnet, but to make sure we can live full and proud Jewish lives free from fear?
Well, I thank him for his question. Anti-Semitism is a poison, and that is why I drove it out of the Labour Party. In government, we're acting to drive it out of society. New powers to ban repeated protests, new plans to root anti-Semitism out of our schools, universities and the health service, a new prescription-like powers to clamp down on malign state activity which incites hatred and violence. And we will take further steps. I'm proud to lead this tolerant, decent country and will always fight for the security, safety and freedom of British Jews.
Sir Ed Davey, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the Prime Minister's remarks about the horrifying train crash in Bedford and the appalling attacks near a mosque in Edinburgh? Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. And can I mention, Mr. Speaker, today's review of Nottingham's maternity services, which is truly shocking. I hope the government will rise to this moment and implement Donna Ockenden recommendations in full without delay. Mr. Speaker, can I also recognise how difficult it was for the Prime Minister to make the statement he did on Monday? It's an important reminder, as we debate issues robustly in this House, that we are all human, and it's something that everyone should remember. Mr. Speaker, as we all know how hard it is when relationships break down with close friends and allies, when even our next-door neighbour barely speaks to us some of the time, has the Prime Minister's experiences opened his eyes to the need to rebuild Britain's relationship with our European friends and allies? Will he advise the right honourable gentleman, the member for Makerfield, to put his EU red lines in the past and adopt our plan for a new growth and defence partnership?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the fact that we've reset our relationship with the EU and we're bringing it closer together. That is in the best interests of our country, and I know he understands that. And I know that, like me, he's been reflecting on his own career. Given that he had revelations, he turned down a job with MI6. I think the whole House will be wondering what might have been. 00 David.
Sir Ed Davey. Mr. Speaker, it's very tempting to respond to that, but I've signed the Official Secrets Act. But I have to say on Europe, when history looks back at the Prime Minister's time in office, I fear that clinging to those old red lines will be judged a mistake. But, Mr. Speaker, moving on, as we swelter through this dangerous heat wave, we see the damage caused by extreme weather and climate change. Schools closed, travel chaos, lives at risk, massive costs to our economy and society. And with our Met Office already warning that future summers will regularly break 40 degrees at even greater human and financial cost, is he alarmed that some parties in this House still follow Donald Trump with policies to send temperatures soaring even higher? So will the Prime Minister warn his successor not to listen to Conservative and Reform voices and instead back our plans to cut bills and tackle climate change?
Can I thank him for raising climate change, because it is one of the most significant challenges of our time, and the weather today reminds us just how important it is. And it used to be common ground across this House, actually, that climate change was the generational challenge, and common ground that the UK should be a leader globally on it. And I remember not so long ago the party opposite leading in the COP summit, something that we were able to support. It is a shame that in order to chase reform votes, they've changed their mind, and we haven't got that consensus across the House. But I will always maintain that we must be global leaders on climate change, and we always will be.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, a mature street tree fell on my house. No one was hurt, but it is another reminder of the results of this extreme heat that we're facing. Today is the hottest June day ever on record. Extreme heat and flooding are becoming more normal, and the government need to stay ahead of this. In our homes, in our workplaces, and in our farming. As Chair of the Environment APPG, I'm conducting an inquiry into government preparedness. Can the Prime Minister tell the country what actions he is taking to step up our resilience?
Well, thank you for a question, and it's clear that severe heat waves are evidence that climate change is impacting our country. And we've been working, Mr. Speaker, to coordinate the response, and I urge people to follow the guidance from the Health Security Agency. We're making our country more resilient for the future by modernising building regulations so homes are cooler and better ventilated, building 9 new reservoirs to protect water supplies, and investing record amounts in flood defences and sustainable farming. While Labour is doing that, Tourism Reform want to rip up the Climate Change Act. That is the wrong approach for our country.
There's Savile Roberts.
Yeah. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Lefarydd. The end of the Prime Minister's premiership comes close on the heels of the end of Labour's 100-year dominance in Wales. People simply didn't feel that his party stood up for them. And it's irrefutable that this too is part of the Prime Minister's legacy. There is a tradition, I believe, of leaving notes on desks for successors. So will he leave a useful note to the incoming Prime Minister that respect and understanding go a very long way, and that democratic choices, including those of devolution, can't be dismissed?
I shall leave a note saying what we delivered for Wales in these 2 years was the largest ever devolution settlement, the UK's first small nuclear reactor in Anglesey, investing £14 billion in Welsh Rail, a pay rise for 170,000 workers across Wales, and I'll end the note by saying we're lifting 70,000 Welsh children out of poverty. Nick Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent, Jake McGregor Howe, a 16-year-old with everything to live for, has been diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia, a rare neurodegenerative condition which is cruel and swift-acting. The average life expectancy of people diagnosed is just 37. Despite the NHS's founding principle being that care should be based on clinical need, not ability to pay, Jake's father is crowdfunding to pay for treatment in Germany with a new drug, omavaloxolone, which has received clinical approval here but is not available through the NHS. Assessment by NICE has stalled. The condition is not classed as an ultra-rare disease, yet is rare enough that any drug to treat it will struggle to meet NICE cost-effective criteria. So the family constantly have to raise enough money to pay for each round of treatment. And shockingly, Jake has recently undertaken a PIP assessment and been turned down for much-needed support. Families should never have to crowdfund for treatment abroad for a life-threatening disease. So will the Prime Minister arrange for me and other colleagues who have constituents with this cruel condition to meet the Health Secretary and discuss a way forward?
Can I start by sending my best wishes to Jake and his family? The changes we've made to the way NICE evaluates medicines is already increasing access to innovative new medicines. I will make sure that she gets the chance to meet the Health Minister to discuss Jake's case and the related issues.
Sir Desmond Swin.
Mr. Speaker, I hope there's still time in which the Prime Minister will be able to enlighten his party as to the moral of the cautionary tale of Jim, who ran away from his nurse and was eaten by a lion.
Well, can I thank the right honourable gentleman? He's always most generous. And, Mr. Speaker, I'll never forget that just a few years ago I went on holiday in his constituency with my family, and I was in the kitchen of the place we were renting when somebody leant through the open door, and it was the right honourable gentleman with a bottle of champagne saying, "Welcome to the New Forest," and then he took time to speak to my family, including my wife's elderly father, and to my children. I thank him for his generosity.
Paulette Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the Prime Minister for his leadership. One of the concerns that I hear most often from my constituents across Erdington, Kingstanding, Castle Vale and South Oscott is about the rapid growth of exempt accommodation. Properties refused HMO licences in my constituency and across Birmingham are opening anyway as exempt accommodation with very little scrutiny, which undermines local community and decision makers. Will the Prime Minister, sorry, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Will the Prime Minister confirm when will this new legislation be brought forward and will it fill the loopholes? Also, will this legislation and its regulations be applied retrospectively so that communities like mine are protected?
Can I thank her for her question? And everyone deserves a safe place to call home. The Housing Secretary has the power to introduce locally led licensing and will consult on these regulations in the summer. Under our proposals, national standards for supported housing will be enforced by local authorities. I'm proud of the action that we've taken to back renters, abolishing Section 21 evictions, expanding the Decent Home Standard and Awab's Law to cover the private rental market.
Jack Rankin.
Mr. Speaker, the first duty of His Majesty's Government, indeed the Prime Minister's first duty, is the defence of the realm. The Prime Minister is not responsible for the worsening geopolitical situation, but he is responsible for this country's reaction to it. It is imperative that we can outline to our allies at the Ankara NATO summit early next month how we will meet that situation. There were reports yesterday that he is being pushed to delay again the Defence Investment Plan by the new member for Makerfield's Outriders. Will he confirm to this House that he will push ahead with its publication, confirm that it is fully funded to the level the Chief of Defence Staff said is required, and not to the level his former Defence Secretary resigned over, and in doing so, fulfil his first duty to defend the realm?
That's the first duty the last government spectacularly failed at, because they hollowed out our armed forces. We've already delivered the biggest sustained boost in defence spending since the 80s. That's £270 billion over this Parliament. We will increase that with the Defence Investment Plan, which will be published before the NATO summit.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following last Friday's train collision south of Bedford, the emergency response from Bedfordshire Police, British Transport Police, Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, the East of England Ambulance Service, Magbas Air Ambulance and other counties' air ambulances, our local NHS hospitals and, of course, railway staff. Their response was swift, professional, compassionate in supporting those who were impacted, especially in such distressing circumstances. This was public service at its best. Will the Prime Minister join with me in thanking all of those involved for their outstanding work in the aftermath of this tragic incident?
Can I thank her and the thoughts of the whole House with the family of the driver who lost his life and those that were injured, some of them extremely seriously. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, I spoke to the CEO of the East of England Ambulance Service to thank his team for their professionalism in responding. And we talked through the nature and the scale of the challenge that they faced in relation to that crash. They were outstanding in the most difficult of circumstances. And by the time I called him on Saturday morning, he assured me they were all back at work and they were all back on duty, dealing with whatever else might happen that weekend, having delivered those that needed to be delivered to the hospitals. I found that humbling. It is a real tribute to those that responded, as they always do, including, I must say, the local community in this case. But I also want to thank the brilliant NHS staff who are still caring for those who are seriously injured.
Speaker, my children, like million others, are kicking every ball of the England World Cup campaign. But I, as a parent, are really concerned about their security in this country, along with other Muslim parents. Let me explain why. When a Sikh lady got raped in Warsaw, the perpetrator repeatedly called her an effing Muslim bitch. Whilst there was no condemnation from the Minister from the dispatch box, no outcry from members in this chamber who openly call out these matters when the perpetrators are of a different colour. When we had the Unite the Kingdom march calling openly for the expulsion of Muslims in this country, there was no ministerial statement condemning such statements. When this weekend we had 5 members of the Muslim community stabbed on the streets of Edinburgh, there was no ministerial statement of condemnation, no Cobra meeting and no solidarity. Can I ask the Prime Minister, what does this silence say to my children as they wait with abated breath for Harry Kane to bring it home?
I want his children to feel safe in this country, and I will do everything to make sure that they are. We will all fight anti-Muslim hatred with everything that we've got. An attack on one is attack on all of us. That is what I said at the top of PMQs, and I hope he heard it.
In Lavery. Mr. Speaker, the coal industry social welfare organisation CISWA. It's a miners' charity that was established in the 1920s to support the miners in their communities. It's carried out some incredible work with some incredible employees, but the current leadership team is increasingly detached from its founding principles. Miners' welfare, sporting facilities, community facilities have been allowed to rot, they've been allowed to close with little or no support from CISWA, the charity. And at the same time, CISWA has amassed £30 million in the bank. 30 million, Prime Minister. Does the Prime Minister agree that it's time that the charity faced not only a Charity Commission inquiry, but also a serious reform into the policies, the practices and finances, and should benefit the former mining communities it was founded to serve, instead of constructing a £30 million ivory tower for the future?
Can I thank him for raising this important issue? I know members across the House have raised issues with the organisation directly. It is imperative that these communities are listened to. I understand that the Charity Commission has opened a compliance case. I'll get that confirmed for him. I'm proud that this government has stood up for mining communities, including ending the injustice of coal pension schemes, increasing the pensions of over 150,000 former British coal employees, and I thank him for raising this case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. US big tech has exploited us for far too long. So I'm delighted that the Met Police followed my advice and pushed Apple and Google to implement the stolen handset blacklist, curbing resale and cutting mobile theft by almost half. Likewise, does the Prime Minister agree it's time to stand up to social media companies and reclassify them from platforms to publishers, holding them responsible for the harmful and addictive content that they recommend, promote and profit from?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank him for his question. He will have seen the action we're taking in relation to social media. The social media ban for under-16s, which has been welcomed by families across the country, strengthening the Online Safety Act to tackle intimate images, abuse and cyber flashing, and closing loopholes in chatbots, and taking on Grok. But there's more to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Aldershot and Farnborough, thanks to this Labour government, this week, we are bringing the National Armed Forces Day celebrations back to the home of the British Army. Yeah. But in a week when we salute those who have served and are serving our country, elderly Gurkha veterans were assaulted in the park by our war memorial and told to go home. Will the Prime Minister and the House join me in standing against this despicable attack and commend the heroism of our Gurkhas? And does he agree with me that now is the time to resolve the long-standing issues on Gurkha pensions, as we have been working towards, because the Gurkhas have given so much for our country?
Can I thank her for her question? She's a great champion for our armed forces, and the fact that the national celebrations are returning to Aldershot this week are a testament to her campaigning. The racist attack she describes is utterly disgraceful, and I condemn it, and I hope the whole House will condemn it. We stand with our Gurkhas, who have made an incredible contribution to our armed forces and continue to do so. Mr. Speaker, on Gurkha pensions, ministers have met her, veterans and the Government of Nepal for constructive discussions. These will continue, and I pay tribute to her for her dedicated work on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by wishing Scotland well tonight in their match against Brazil?
Following the conviction of former SNP Chief Executive Peter Murrell for embezzlement, serious questions about governance and oversight remain unanswered. The Scottish Government is refusing to establish an inquiry despite clear public concern. The law does provide for UK inquiries into devolved matters where there is a wider public interest. So as the Prime Minister prepares to leave office, will he set up an inquiry with the powers needed so we can uncover the truth?
Well, can I wish Scotland well as well in the upcoming match, and of course England in the third match, a little better than last night, hopefully. But, Mr. Speaker, on this question, it is really a serious set of questions that need to be answered by the SNP and the government, and they simply refuse to do so. They call for transparency and accountable for everybody else when they have giant questions of their own to answer. Nothing to see here, don't want to know, don't want to have an inquiry. Totally the wrong approach.
Speaker, this government's commitment under the leadership and influence of the Prime Minister to tackle violence against women and girls is a commitment that is really shared by many of my constituents. On Saturday, I was out in Llangollen for a Welsh Women's Aid fundraiser organised by community champion Moira Gleed. Llangollen's most Wuthering Heights Day ever saw me join 230 plus Cathys, learn a dance routine, all dressed in red, and perform in a streamed performance that went across the world. We've even had some fans from Japan get in contact. I know, thank you. Will the Prime Minister join me in recognising the hard work of Moira, her daughter Rowena, and all of the organisers, volunteers, and importantly, the performers for making this really important event happen?
Well, can I pay tribute to her and all of those that took part? And I'm really glad that it got noticed around the world, because this is what raises awareness. I thought she was going to ask me to join her in the next dance, but if it's simply to pay tribute, I'm very happy to do so.
Richard Ford. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tony Blair suggested that at the beginning of his premiership, he was at his most popular and least capable. Blair talked about ending his time in office at his least popular and most capable. For the sake of people in the South West and across the country, what tips can the Prime Minister offer his successor?
Well, I think the first one would be don't ever inflict austerity on the country. And since he's a Lib Dem, I'd probably add, don't wear a wetsuit.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, you will be aware that on Monday it was Windrush Day, founded by Patrick Vernon, to celebrate the contribution of migrants to our community. Could I ask the Prime Minister to outline exactly what this government is doing to recognise and serve the Windrush generation who did so much to play a vital role in our country's history?
Well, can I join her in marking Windrush Day and thank her for raising this? Because this is the opportunity to thank a community that made an extraordinary contribution to our country and remember the injustice that they faced. I'm proud that we've overhauled the compensation scheme to deliver faster access to compensation and justice, provided £1.5 million to organisations supporting claimants, and appointed the first ever Windrush Commissioner to rebuild trust and deliver justice. I'm incredibly proud to lead a country that's built on dignity and respect, and where everyone is seen and everyone is valued.
Wendy Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From slashing winter fuel payments to surrendering the Chagos Islands, this Prime Minister has got every major decision wrong. It's no wonder even his own MPs are now looking elsewhere for the answers. So as this may be one of, if not his final appearances at the dispatch box, will he make one final U-turn? Will he scrap Labour's disastrous grey belt policy and help protect the precious green belt spaces and green areas across Aldridge Brownhills? And if not, his legacy will be one that he was the Prime Minister who destroyed so many of our local communities.
I do like the Right Honourable Lady, and when she talks about destroying and legacies, I remember she was the Chief Whip, I think, to Liz Truss. I'm very proud that we are building the houses that we need so that everyone has a base camp for their opportunity and their aspiration, something the last government failed on and we're succeeding on.
Final question, Alistair Strathern.
Mr. Speaker, Gareth Southgate's documentary last month spotlighted some of the heartbreaking ways we're failing too many young men growing up in Britain today. But it was heartening to see the inspiring work Hitchin youth worker Dan Gaze was able to carry out with young men in my community who found themselves in hard times. Both Dan and the boys at Hitchin Loud Boys School who were interviewed as part of the documentary I thought were an absolute credit to my town. But how can we make sure we're encouraging more men into teaching and youth work roles so that every young man growing up in Britain today can benefit from these positive role models across their community?
Well, can I join him in paying tribute to the inspiring community members like Dan, who truly represent the best of Britain? Having an inspiring role model is vital for young men, and that's why we're investing £500 million in our National Youth Strategy, which includes launching 50 new young future hubs, creating more mentoring and youth worker opportunities.
Let the front benches change over.
Right, thank you very much, everyone, for watching and taking part. We're going to carry on, though. We'll stay with it for a bit. Don't forget, we'll be back same time, same place next week. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm not going to say too much. I'm fucking melting here. But I appreciate every one of you. And thank you so much. We'll carry on.
We now come to the urgent question. Nigel Huddleston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport if she will make a statement on the publication of the Media Green Paper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the honourable gentleman for bringing this to the House and giving us the opportunity to discuss this important advancement. Yesterday, the government published a green paper, Watch This Space, to set a new strategic direction for media policy in the UK. The way we consume broadcast media is changing, and television is undergoing a profound transformation, having moved away from a system of traditional channels to a far more fragmented system where people access TV on demand and on video sharing platforms. Young people in particular are far more likely to access media on their phones and tablets, through streaming services and platforms, and we believe as a government that we are not equipping that generation adequately with access to high quality media. There are three key areas where we intend to act. The first is around digital prominence, where we're exploring legislative options to require social media platforms and connected TV interfaces to make public service media content, particularly trusted news, highly visible and easy to discover. This is not about promoting government narratives or only the BBC, but it is about ensuring the brilliant journalism from many of our news publishers, both local and national and broadcasters, can get in front of the public. For that reason, we're also opening the conversation about how we define public service broadcasting in the modern age. Secondly, the transition to internet TV is where we're outlining plans for a managed shift away from terrestrial broadcasting to internet-delivered IPTV. We know this is an essential switchover, both in terms of access and cost, but we want to make sure that this transition is managed responsibly and that nobody is left behind. We're therefore consulting on two dates for the switchover: 2034, when current licences expire, or 2044, with any date contingent on a full and watertight transition plan. Finally, we are protecting major sporting events. This will add on-demand and streaming rights for major sporting events like the World Cup and the Olympics to the listed events regime, protecting free, universal fan access as viewing habits shift online. Taken together, these proposals set out a vision for future TV and media policy where everyone can access world-leading public service broadcasting content, including children's and news programming, away from the mis- and disinformation that's defined too many of our online lives. This government will ensure that no matter where you access your TV, you're given access to high-quality programming that informs, educates and entertains, and this paper is the next stage of our ambition.
Well,
Thank you for granting this urgent question, Mr. Speaker. And I agree with much of what the Secretary of State just said. And there's much to be applauded in the media strategy. And the overall intent is noble, to ensure everyone has access to trustworthy news and to counter misinformation. The challenge and the potential danger is how do we do that? But in terms of positive elements of the strategy, as she mentioned, I also welcome the government's intention to add on-demand rights to the free-to-air listed sports regime. But there are many other controversial aspects, and as she mentioned, the plans to close down digital terrestrial transmission by 2034 or 2044, which is a major concern, especially those living in remote or rural areas. The strategy also covers interventions to support media literacy and promoting the questioning of the accuracy of news. But by pushing such an onus of responsibility on media companies themselves, this may reduce the responsibility on schools or indeed on parents, and I'd like her thoughts on that. We then come to the thorny issue of prominence. The government is proposing interventions to make trustworthy news providers easily discoverable in order to counter misinformation. And this includes national and local news publishers and broadcasters. But who decides what a trustworthy news provider is and what trusted content is? Is it an approved list? Is it an algorithm? Is it a human being? We need to be careful about descending into some kind of Orwellian society. Freedom of speech and freedom of the press is vitally important to our free society. And the concern of some of the press is that in order to qualify for prominence, a newspaper may need to sign up to a state-backed regulator. Can the Minister rule that out? The proposals in the Green Paper to support our public service broadcasters, such as the BBC, ITV and Channel 4, is well intended, especially in an age where there is undeniably so much misinformation online. But a requirement for third-party platforms and social media entities to make such broadcasters' content prominent is problematic for the obvious reason that their content is not always to be trusted or unbiased either. So who decides whether it is? Many people question the BBC's coverage of politics in general, of trans rights, of Israel and so on. The BBC doctored a video of President Trump. It fails to call Hamas a terrorist organisation. It has pushed highly questionable content through BBC Arabic, and it reprimanded a newsreader for saying pregnant women rather than pregnant people. Now, there may be plenty of people who like the idea of legislation to push woke or lefty content online. I'm not one of them, and there are many people who agree with me. So can the Secretary of State provide more details on how trusted content will be defined and who will ultimately be the arbiter? And finally, can she confirm how extensively she has engaged with industry to come up with these proposals?
Secretary of State.
Yeah, can I thank him for that? He asked a series of questions. I'll do my best to answer them all as swiftly as I can. Firstly, he talks rightly about the importance of getting the transition right and choosing the date well, 2034 or 2044. He talks about the particular challenges in remote and rural areas which this government recognises. There are also, as he knows and we've discussed before, particular issues for older people, for people with disabilities and others. And we're working with industry to put together a plan that is watertight to help people to make that transition, to ensure that nobody is left behind. That is precisely why we're asking these questions now, to make sure that we're ready and that we don't leave people behind. On media literacy, look, I think he's right to say that the onus can't just be on media companies alone. There is a responsibility on all of us, including schools, including those of us in public life, to make sure that we're equipping our young people with the skills that they need to be able to navigate a completely transformed media landscape from the one that we had in this country when he and I were growing up. And I do want to reassure him that this is not about pushing all of the responsibility onto media companies and letting everybody else off the hook. We've all got to work together in order to achieve that. And it's not just about young people either. Actually, there's serious challenges with people from every generation seeing information online that just simply is false. When it comes to who defines trustworthy news, I think this really is one of the most challenging aspects of the consultation that we've put out. Who decides what is trustworthy news, how we decide what is trustworthy news. He'll know, of course, that the definition of public service broadcasting is set out in law, but trustworthy news is a separate matter. And this is precisely why we've asked the question. I would gently push back on some of the sort of narrative that he advanced about the BBC. It is still the most trustworthy source of news, not just in this country, but across the world. And on Monday, I was on Newsround explaining this and the social media ban that we're introducing to that generation of children who will be most affected by it. And it strikes me that there is no other country in the world that has quality programming like that through their public service broadcaster. And so I think we should be careful about not trashing the BBC, whilst, you know, he and I have shared serious frustrations about some of the specific issues that he suggested, and we should always demand the highest quality content. I still believe and firmly believe that the BBC is one of the best broadcasters in the world.
Dr. Rupert.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome this bold green paper. And this emphasis on page 52 talks about access to accurate news, informing and entertaining content that reflects the diversity of the UK and brings audiences together. So would my right honourable friend do all she can to uphold the practice of independent, rigorously researched journalism in this world of sort of algorithmically driven clickbait content that monetises hate? And given the record fines that it's had from Ofcam, is there any way of sort of reining in GB News and maybe even look at how effective Ofcom is?
Can I thank her for that? She asked a number of questions. I'll try and address them. First of all, in the Green Paper, we have deliberately broadened out access to good quality, trusted news and content to include potentially print media as well. It's not lost on me that after during the Southport riots, that people were seeking out the Liverpool Echo and other local news outlets to try and find real information as opposed to the mis and disinformation that they were seeing online. And she'll know that alongside this, one of the things that this government has done is publish the first ever local media strategy to try and support that industry to be able to continue to provide high quality news. I would also, she mentioned algorithms. I think one of the reasons that we are particularly keen to make sure that there is prominence of quality, trusted and high quality content online and on platforms such as YouTube is because at the moment the algorithms decide what children in particular see. I do want to commend YouTube for the work that they've done on YouTube Kids, but we need to see more of this because at the moment we're putting up with a situation where the older generation tends to be watching traditional television on television sets and they can easily find good quality content and trusted news. The younger generation tends to be on devices online and can't, and that is not acceptable.
And as the main Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Mr. Speaker, the Green Paper rightly recognises the severe financial challenges facing our public service broadcasters, which have been vividly exposed by recent devastating cuts at the BBC. The Lib Dems have long proposed that the BBC World Service should be fully funded directly from FCDO budgets, protecting its vital global footprint while freeing up £221 million a year to be reinvested at home. So will the Secretary of State take on board our proposals, and what urgent conversations has she had with her Foreign Office colleagues to make this a reality? Mr. Speaker, turning to online spaces, the proposal to highlight trusted news sources on social media is welcome. But unfortunately, this is just a sticking plaster over the fundamental issue that big social media platforms are already rigged against truth, fairness and impartiality. The real threat to our democracy is these harmful platforms themselves, which use algorithms deliberately engineered to amplify foreign disinformation while systematically choking out trusted journalistic sources. Should the Minister not be focusing the full weight of her department and that of her colleagues in DCIT on cleaning up social media platforms once and for all, rather than fighting a losing battle against bad actors on systems that are built to work against us?
Yeah. Can I thank her for that? She talks about online regulation rightly, and she'll know that that is primarily the responsibility of the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. But my colleague, the Secretary of State, and I work very closely together on it. We have to make sure that we both take action to deal with the scourge of mis and disinformation online, which she rightly talks about. but also make sure that we give people access to trusted news, news that they can genuinely trust, and much more readily available. And so the two things should be seen together. I apologise, my honourable friend also asked me about Ofcom. She'll know that we recently appointed a new chair of Ofcom. We believe that Ofcom must do more in order to act decisively and quickly in this space. And when it comes to the BBC World Service, she'll know that we have already stepped in as a government with the support of the FCDO in order to ensure that it continues to be funded. But colleagues across the whole House will have seen recently the funding cuts that were announced at the BBC. She rightly says that one of the pressures on broadcasters like the BBC is the fact that they're currently trying to broadcast through two distinct channels, and so it is important that the government grips this issue. And she'll know that the Charter Review is running in parallel to this process. We wanted to look at it all in the round, but it is our intention through that Charter Review to make sure that the BBC is adequately funded, that it goes on not just to survive but to thrive until well into the latter part of this century. And she'll also know that we recently announced that through that process we will put the BBC on a permanent charter so that it exists for all of us forever.
Natasha Irons.
Mr. Speaker, I must declare an interest. I work for a public service broadcaster, and my husband still does. And as somebody who understands the sector a bit, it isn't just about public service, it's about recognising Britishness on our screens and in the media, and protecting what it is to be us, essentially, and providing opportunities for people to get into the sector. So I really do welcome the thinking on this, but can the Secretary of State just give us a bit more detail on how these changes will ensure that our public service media is protected for the future, and how it will continue so that people can continue to access high quality, not just news, but content in general, and access to opportunities?
Yeah. Can I thank her very much for that? And I strongly endorse what she said. We've lost many parts of our civic realm, whether it's the town centres where people come to, thriving town centres where people come together, whether it's the social clubs that used to exist all over our country that no longer exist, the youth clubs which we're busy rebuilding, and I'd like to thank her for all of her help and support on that. But I believe that the media is, and public service media in particular, is an essential part of that civic realm, whether it's VE Day or Remembrance Sunday or the World Cup that we're all currently enjoying. The public service broadcasters provide these shared moments where we all come together as a nation and celebrate what it means to be us. And so we are determined to grip these issues, not to allow us to drift into a transition, but actually grip these issues so that our public service media is adequately funded and is able to continue to do that.
Dame Caroline Down is Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State knows as well as I do that the media landscape is changing so quickly that no sooner was the ink dry on the last Media Act, it was almost obsolete. We know that for the first time YouTube has overtaken the BBC in audience reach, and that's why this paper is really welcome. But I wonder if this is the first step towards a new media bill, a more extensive one that reflects the nation's viewing habits, that reaches a kind of definitive definition of television. The paper talks about new television when it talking about the video sharing platforms and YouTube and what have you. But we need a new definition of television to reflect technological change. And then finally, the consultation refers to media literacy. But surely if we are really planning to future-proof this, we should be talking about AI literacy as well, and not just for children.
Can I thank her for that? On the question of legislation, we'll of course keep that option open and won't hesitate to legislate should we need to. We deliberately drew the parameters and contours of this Green Paper very broadly so that we could have that very open discussion and work together to ensure that we then take the action that we need to take. I would just say a slightly more reflective point that we also have, on the point that she makes about the ink not being dry before the landscape had changed, I think that's particularly true in the online space. And rather than thinking about a piece of legislation, I think my colleague, the Secretary of State at DCIT, and I have been reflecting that we think we're probably going to need to legislate quite frequently in order to keep pace with change. When it comes to the media literacy, I agree with her about AI as well. I think there's two parts to that. One is about making sure that we have the right regulation so that people can trust what they see and that we don't do anything in the AI space that prevents good quality journalism from being able to thrive. And the second issue is making sure that we're equipping people of this country and empowering them with the skills and the ability to navigate that.
Speaker. Right now, Britain's adversaries around the world are investing heavily in disinformation designed to disrupt democracies across the West, and we are seeing the impact of that here in this country as well. So I welcome the regime set out to promote truthful content on social media, but promoting good content is not the same as tackling the bad, and I worry that actually there's quite a disparate approach across government to this, with Ofcom and DCMS, the Defending Democracy Task Force. What will the Secretary of State do to pull together across government to address mis- and disinformation from hostile states around the world?
Can I thank him for that, and can I reassure him that I'm working very closely not just with the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, but also with the Home Secretary and with the Communities Secretary as well, who leads the Social Cohesion Task Force that is specifically looking at mis- and disinformation and how we join up across government to tackle it. I have to say that I think, we've had a huge debate in this House recently about the defence of our nation, and rightly we are stepping up to invest more in defence spending in the current global climate that we're in. But there's a war being waged in our communities, actually, on our streets, online, on social media, that we've got to take as seriously as equipping our armed forces with what they need as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This House ended the licensing of the press on the 3rd of May 1695, when it declined to renew the relevant legislation. That does make the definition of news sources difficult, and perhaps that is why in the Green Paper it talks about prominence for PSM and potentially for local and national news sources. But would she agree that it is unthinkable to have a situation where you would be promoting, say, the BBC and Channel 4 News, but not our major national newspapers and trusted local news sources?
That is precisely why we've asked the question, because there are different ways of approaching this. He's absolutely right. One of them is you could quite simply say public service broadcasters. We think that we may be missing a trick there, and that's why we've asked the question in the consultation.
Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary's dedication to trusted news and promoting public service media is really welcome. But I'm sure she shares my concerns that recent announcements of brutal cuts at STV and the BBC will dramatically undermine this, as thousands of jobs and programmes are at risk of being lost. So will she urgently intervene in these issues to protect jobs and the future of public service media?
Can I thank her for that? And obviously, as a government, we've also been talking to the journalism trade unions about to make sure that when those cuts are made, that people are protected and that we do everything that we can to protect really good quality, not just journalists, but some of the technical staff and others, particularly across our nations and regions where they feel very vulnerable to those cuts. Can I say to her as well that the cuts at STV and the BBC are precisely the reason that we need to manage this transition and we need to get it right. We can't duck the question of when we make the transition, because the costs that it's placing on public service broadcasters are incredibly onerous in what is already a very tight funding landscape. But as she'll have heard me say to my honourable friend, the honourable gentleman earlier, we are determined to make sure that we manage this transition well and that nobody is left behind.
Dr. Al Pinkerton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the recent bombing of Tehran, when a power outage hit that city, 20,000 bots promoting the cause of Scottish nationalism went off instantaneously. And I don't say that in any way to question the legitimacy of a political position, admittedly one that I disagree with, but it reveals the extent to which our country is under daily assault from those who would seek to tear us apart. So can I ask the Minister what plans she has to build out from this media Green Paper, to take a whole-of-government approach to enhance media literacy, to bear down on the conduits that are driving disinformation in our society, but also to ensure that our armed forces and our security services have precisely the resources that they need to secure our integrity as a nation.
Can I thank him for that? He asked a number of questions, but I think the essence of what he's saying is something that I strongly agree with. I think there is a war being waged in our communities and on our streets and on local online forums as much as national. We saw it in the recent Makerfield by-election, where overnight, when that by-election was triggered, we saw the targeting of people in my town of Wigan with mis and disinformation that went through the roof. And we know that that is often deliberate, and it's often triggered by foreign state actors and can have an extremely disruptive influence on communities, and it's something that we need to deal with. This Green Paper deals with questions of media literacy and prominence and other measures that we think will help to deal with that, but nobody in this House should take that as the beginning and end of the conversation. I'm working closely with colleagues across the House, including in Defence, to make sure that on every front we're equipping us for the war that we find ourselves in.
John Morris.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Secretary should be aware that terrestrial television is not just an entertainment platform, it's a resilient form of communication that reaches into communities where digital or broadband or mobile signal quite simply doesn't have the reach or the reliability. Does she share my concern that the switch off of terrestrial TV in either 2034 or 44 could cut off communities in my constituency from that resilient communication platform? And will she meet with me to discuss my concerns?
I'm absolutely confident, having heard him championing his constituents in this House before, that he would never allow that to happen, and neither will we. And of course, I'll be happy to offer him a meeting with the relevant minister.
Sir Julian.
On a similar theme, undoubtedly near the top of the Secretary of State's to-do list today is to answer written question 11584, which is due for answer tomorrow. And this is about the threat posed by the BBC World Service apparently discontinuing its long-wave transmitters at Droitwich, Berghead and Wester Glen. And what we want to know is how will closed societies like Russia be able to receive news information when they are subject to the suppression of all the internet-based routes?
Can I thank you for that? I will, of course, make sure that he gets the answer to that in a timely fashion by tomorrow, and I'm more than happy to follow up and discuss it with him.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome the Green Paper's focus on media literacy so that people in Portsmouth have the skills they need to identify mis- and disinformation. But as viewing habits change and technology develops, can the Secretary of State reassure the House and my residents in Portsmouth that any transition towards internet-based television will be carefully managed, particularly those who may be less confident online and who have limited access to digital services?
I'm really happy to give her that assurance. That's why we're getting on the front foot now and working with industry in order to manage that transition. Access is obviously extremely important, but so too is affordability, and that's something that we're looking closely at.
Robert Jenrick.
So let me get this straight. The government is planning to decide either a minister or, even worse, unaccountable civil servants, which news providers are deemed trustworthy and which ones are deemed untrustworthy, and then the government or unaccountable civil servants and quangos are going to give priority to the services which it deems to be trustworthy and reduce the prominence of those that they don't like and they consider to be untrustworthy. This sounds quite dystopian to me. How can this be seen as anything other than a very serious attack on freedom of the press and freedom of speech?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to take any lessons from him and his disgusting party with the way that they spread mis- and disinformation. What I would say to him is that this House has already come together to define what public service media is in law. That is a definition that was passed by Parliament, and I don't recall there being a lot of concern about that. It's something that has been enormously beneficial. One of the ways that we could define trusted news is to follow that definition, but we could also, for example, align with the Editor's Code. There are lots of different options for doing this, but to somehow claim that this is about the government controlling what people see is just absolute nonsense.
Smith.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker. Can I warmly welcome the publication of the Green Paper? None of us have all the answers when it comes to the fast-moving media landscape, but setting out the challenges and some principled way forward is really a good start. And can I especially welcome the focus on a duty for media literacy? My personal view is that a public purpose for the BBC on media literacy might be better than a one on growth, but that's a debate for another day. But is she slightly disappointed, as I was, in the tone of some of the contributions from the opposition about the prominence for trusted news? We already have a prominence regime in place. We just need to update it for the modern age. And when, in an era when misinformation and disinformation are rife, isn't it more important than ever that people get access to trustworthy news? And isn't that what a prominence regime allows?
I mean, I really agree with him, and I think in particular we are letting down a generation of young people who, as I said to my honourable friend earlier, are often consuming media very, very differently from my generation and the generations before us. And it cannot be right that my generation, who are often going on to consume broadcast on television sets, are able easily and quickly to find high-quality content and trusted news, but a younger generation is not.
Bob Black.
Thank you, Speaker. Hostile state actors are routinely broadcasting to our young people misinformation and radicalising them in their own homes. And I agree completely with the Secretary of State that we have to take action. The problem is that primary legislation will never keep pace with technology. So can I urge her to consider a media bill with wide-ranging powers that can then have a position of secondary legislation that can keep up with those changes to technology?
Can I thank him for that? Very similar to the point made by my honourable friend, the Chair of the Select Committee. I think he is right to push us to think about how we can very rapidly adapt to what is a very rapidly changing landscape. There's obviously the question for this whole House about how much oversight the House will want to have and scrutiny that they'll want to give to any measures that we bring forward. So it's a question that the House will have to answer together about whether the use of secondary legislation in this space is something that we collectively believe is acceptable. But I think there are merits in what he proposes.
Matt Turby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a former employee of the BBC for 15 years, I know how important those Reithian principles to educate, inform and entertain are at the core of everything that organisation does. Dissemination of fake news and misinformation online is a genuine risk to our democracy. And does she agree with me that even if people are going to trusted sites and sources online, such as the BBC, ITV and Channel 4, the mix of slop around it is a real risk of polluting people's ability to see accurate information, and that this demonstrates the absolute need for trusted news sources online.
Secretary of State.
Can I thank him for that? As I said to my honourable friend earlier, during the Southport riots, there was an increase in people going to the BBC and going to the Liverpool Echo to get information. We saw something similar actually after the Manchester Arena bomb, where people were seeking out the Manchester Evening News as a really trusted source of news. He'll be aware that many of those trusted sources are under serious financial pressure, and that is one of the reasons why we acted, particularly around the local media strategy, to make sure that those are available. We want to make sure that they're more prominent and easier to find online, but in order to do that, we've got to make sure that they actually are there in the first place.
Pete Wishaw.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The proliferation of misinformation, invidious algorithms and harmful context are the defining features of the current media landscape, and they are causing real harms and divisions within our communities. We need bold action to tackle this, and that surely includes taking on those who direct and abuse these situations. So how will she promote trusted sites when there's people even in this House prepared to undermine them, and we're losing jobs and services and public service broadcasters?
I mean, that's partly what this TV Green Paper is designed to address, although, as I said to my honourable friend earlier, it's one part of the whole. Getting regulation online right, getting the enforcement of that regulation right, and being far more proactive through Ofcom in enforcing the law that already exists is an essential part of this, as well as the measures that he'll have seen that we're proposing around prominence and other areas.
Bob McKee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome this Green Paper? I think it's both timely and forward-looking, and I think the government is right to respond to the fact that people get much of their news from social media nowadays. But can I ask, as more and more people turn to AI chatbots for news and information, what work is the government doing to make sure that trusted sources are given prominence in the sourcing of that information?
Yeah. We've done a number of things in this space. I mean, the first is obviously that there is real pressure that AI summaries online are putting on existing publishers. My honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, and I have met with the publishing industry to discuss how we better protect those original sources, which are often far more accurate than the AI summaries that draw from their work. As I said to the chair of the Select Committee, we also, when it comes to media literacy, we need to equip not just the younger generation, but all of us actually with the skills that we need to navigate AI.
So Oliver Dull.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I urge the Secretary of State to keep a genuine open mind with this consultation, and if the evidence doesn't stack up, be prepared to drop measures. In particular, I think the concept of prominence is going to be very difficult to translate from a linear age to the age we're in now without imposing excessive costs and bureaucracy on broadcasters. And as we've seen, this trustworthy news concept is very problematic, because one person's trustworthy news is someone else's propaganda. And just look at this debate between the BBC and GB News. There's plenty of my constituents, frankly, that would trust right now GB News over the BBC. We cannot allow this to be an echo chamber for liberal left groupthink, because otherwise it will further undermine trust and confidence in this place.
Can I thank him for that? And he's absolutely right to say that any responsible government will be careful about the way that we navigate this landscape, because the definition of what is considered to be high quality and trustworthy is contested, and we need to protect the plurality and the diversity of our news and broader media industry. I guess I would just say to him, though, that I believe that for a long time now we have been failing to empower and equip our own citizens with the ability to navigate the new landscape that we find ourselves in. And in particular, as a government, we are really concerned about the blurring of news and fact with polemic and opinion, and that is a space in which we intend to act.
Sarah Coombs.
Speaker, given we are in a world of fake news and given the impact of that on public trust, I really welcome the Minister's work to modernise their prominence regime. The BBC is a jewel in our national crown, and people have mentioned the cuts, but I think it is a real shame that we've got cuts to shows like Moneybox Live, which are really important consumer shows, where we've got scams everywhere. These shows are really important to our nation. So can the Minister just comment a bit more on the BBC and that importance of it to our nation?
Yeah, and I'll say to her very candidly that I am also concerned about the cuts that were announced, and I did raise those concerns directly with the incoming Director General, because obviously we've got the Charter Review process ongoing, and what I would not want to see is the BBC dismantling good structures, dismissing good journalists, and closing down good programmes at a time when we're seeking to work constructively together in order to ensure that they're properly and adequately funded going forwards. But I would also say that there are significant pressures on all of our public service broadcasters at the moment, and that's one reason why we have to grip this issue about transition and make sure that we work together in order to ensure that we can do that with nobody left behind.
I'm Malton.
Mr. Speaker, in a similar vein to the honourable lady who just spoke, I was really concerned to hear of the cuts at the BBC. The World Tonight's going, Today's being cut back. This falls on the heels of cuts at Newsnight as well. It seems to me that the justification for this is that the programme is being reoriented towards young people, which is obviously, a good thing in and of itself. But when I was 18, I didn't listen to any of those programmes, and now I'm in my 40s, I listen to all of them. Do these cuts not undermine the BBC's mission to educate and inform? And in this age of disinformation, is it not vital that we keep them?
As I said to my honourable friend, the elephant in the room is funding, and the BBC hasn't been adequately funded for quite some time. He'll know that fewer and fewer people are paying the licence fee, and that is becoming a major challenge for the BBC. So through the charter process, we'll set out a range of options that are designed to tackle that and make sure that we protect the really high quality programming that he rightly commends.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One, we welcome the Green Paper today. We know from the misinformation, disinformation rise right across our country, and it was shown in the recent Makerfield by-election from the Social Market Foundation, where they saw a quadrupling of fake news and 1 in 6 posts on all the local Facebook groups as fake news. We've seen it in my constituency where a fake news article went rampant across our town about a woman and child being attacked at a train station, which never happened but caused fear and anxiety. So I warmly welcome today, but how can we get more trusted support into our local news services, our local papers and our local broadcasters, because they're the ones that residents, as you rightly point out about the Liverpool Echo example, turn to in times of crisis and where they don't get the information they need.
Thank you for that. I was really struck by the SMF report, and it's certainly something that I recognised as happening very close to home, and he rightly says that that's not new. In fact, my local police say the biggest challenge that they have is the mis and disinformation online that leads people to believe that there is more violent crime than is actually happening, that streets aren't safe, and causes serious challenges to social cohesion. He'll know that earlier this year we published the local media strategy. That is the start of our ambition for local media, not the floor, not the ceiling. There's more that we need to do, particularly in the online space, in order to be able to ensure that publications like the Liverpool Echo are able to thrive.
John Cooper.
Former journalist, I salute the Secretary of State's noble ambition to leave no one behind, but as the honourable member from Hexham pointed out, that the death of terrestrial television risks leaving a lot of people in remote and rural Scotland behind. My constituency, Dumfries and Galloway, has a lot of not spots, and terrestrial television is a key source of news and also entertainment. So can I ask the Secretary of State to use her influence in the forthcoming Northern Powerhouse Cabinet to get broadband rolled out properly across this country?
He's absolutely right to talk about the centrality of broadband access, and digital exclusion is one of the things that we're looking at really carefully. We will make sure that this transition doesn't leave his constituents behind, and I'm looking forward to working with him on that to make sure that we get it right.
It's Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week we had a powerful reminder of how important trusted news broadcasting is when the BBC reported that arson attacks targeting the Prime Minister and his family had been orchestrated by Russia. Not stopping there, Russian-backed bots then spread homophobic misinformation about those attacks. We know how the Conservative Party responded to that. Their vice chair went on national TV and laughed. We can now see how this party, this Labour government, is responding to that issues. So can I urge the Secretary of State to go even further on supporting trusted news sources as a powerful response to mis and disinformation online, a lot of it fuelled by our foreign adversaries?
Can I thank him for that? And he's absolutely right to say that we should demand the highest standards from people across this House and across our public life, and I share his absolute horror at the way that the Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party responded to that.
Rick Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I absolutely welcome this Green Paper. I think it's a really good step forward. We're having this national debate, and I hope in that debate Leveson will not be forgotten and the proposals within it, but she will be aware that the younger people, the majority of the population in fact, do not watch mainstream television, do not read newspapers either in printed or online form. They rely entirely on social media for their news, their information, their opinions and so on. Much of it is sent behind the cloak of anonymity. Often it is dangerous, often it is racist, often it is abusive, and we have a whole generation growing up with their only source of information anonymous stuff put on social media. I realise it's a very difficult balancing act between controlling access to what is a wonderful technology and ensuring that there is some degree of accuracy and accountability within it. Is she aware, I'm sure she is aware, of this huge problem, and does she feel that there is a way forward within the debate about the Green Paper of dealing with this conundrum?
Can I thank him for that? He mentioned Leveson, and I can update the House that I met the families of the victims of press intrusion very recently. We've always acted with care in this space in order to ensure that we protect a free and fair press, but he is absolutely right to say that action is needed to better protect people in this space, and this government is determined to ensure that we do. And secondly, on the point that he makes about young people and the way that they consume news, I do share his serious concern about that. That's partly what this Green Paper is intended to address, but also one of the key driving forces behind the social media ban that my colleague, the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, announced recently. We haven't done enough to protect young people online, and we need to do more.
Well, we come to the birthday boy himself, Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 21 again. Can I thank the Secretary of State for her response to this UQ, particularly her emphasis on the importance of online literacy, which as a former teacher, Chris Vince Bingo in full force today, is really important. Can I also pay tribute to Michael Casey, editor of Your Harlow, an online newspaper that prints tens of thousands of articles every year and has filled the hole left by Harlow Star when it closed down. But to build on my point by my honourable friend from Glasgow South, who talks about the more and more people are using AI summaries to get their news and not relying on those trusted sources. Is there not a danger if we don't provide those support to those trusted sources? And also the AI companies themselves provide that the support to those trusted sources. Those trusted sources will not continue.
Well, on the point about trusted sources, I've been working with the publishing industry to make sure that we protect them and don't allow what is higher quality content to be undermined by AI summaries. We'll bring forward more proposals around this to this House. But it is a concern that we absolutely recognise and share. And secondly, on independent news providers, we've seen lots of very good quality independent news providers spring up around the country. It's great to hear about his local one in Harlow. But there are too many local news deserts across our country, and that's precisely what the local media strategy is intended to address.
Martin Vick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As someone who's been relying on the BBC to deliver news since the days when Jack D'Manio was presenting the Today programme and John Snagg was reading the news, I still rely on the BBC to a considerable extent. But it does annoy me intensely at times, and in particularly in relation to the cuts that were announced and the programmes that they are cutting, which seem to be public service programmes, not ones delivered necessarily by the commercial sector. And on top of that, the demise of news coverage on local radio. Would the Secretary of State assure me that she will convey those views to the BBC and hopefully they'll have a rethink?
Certainly very happy to do so, and he's right to mention the importance of local radio.
Davis.
Oh, sorry, Miss. Such a shock. Thank you. Can I thank the Secretary of State for her answers and for her informed answers. The New Media Green Paper highlights the importance of continuing universal access for good quality, trusted television. And of course, part of maintaining that access is to make the content in the first place. And with the news that the BBC Cymru Wales will see £9 million of spending cuts by the end of 27-28, it's inevitable that Welsh commissions already on the decrease will decline even further. So can the Secretary of State set out how she will protect Welsh and Welsh language content from such sweeping cuts, especially considering that access is already limited to us?
Can I thank her for that? I was recently at the BBC in Cardiff, and the importance of Welsh language content is not lost on this government. It's something that I've discussed with both the interim Director General and the new Director General as well. And can I also say to her that we have been very keen to impress on the BBC the importance of protecting that regional footprint that across all of our nations and regions that was pioneered by the former Director General Tim Davey. Through the Charter Review process, we're ambitious for more power, more funding to be dispersed out of London in order to ensure that the BBC becomes the engine of the nations and regions regions and is truly able to produce content that reflects our entire nation, all of our nations and regions, and not just some parts of the country.
Greg. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I add my voice to those already expressed in concern about the transfer to TV over IP? Technology moves very fast, and I accept at face value the Secretary of State's commitment that no one will be left behind. But we've had 20 years of change from fibre to cabinet and now fibre to premises, yet there are still some of my constituents on copper to premises surviving on 2-3 megabit download, which would not be capable of getting television into their homes from whether it's 2034 or later switchover. So can I urge her, before any decision is made, to work very closely with DCIT that no matter what the core statistic says about how many homes have fibre to premises, in rural communities particularly, there will still be people left behind. And added to that, in many villages where there is only one fibre provider and no competition, there's fibre and there's fibre, and not all of it is as reliable as it looks.
He's absolutely right. I'm happy to give him that assurance. He will know that the Minister for Media is also a DCIT Minister, so I'm sure he will be working very closely with himself and his colleagues in order to make sure that we address those concerns.
Reynolds.
Speaker, over recent weeks, one of the most frequent adverts served to me and many others on social media platform X was an AI-generated fake image of a member of this House fighting with the Governor of the Bank of England. Now, when half of adults include social media as one of the sources that they get their news from, can the Secretary of State confirm what conversations she's had with colleagues in DCIT to make sure that these fake news social media adverts do not become our news?
I think he's right to raise that specific issue, and I have discussed it with my honourable friend, the Secretary of State in DCIT. She and I collectively are determined to make sure that we properly regulate the online space so that we protect people from those sorts of fake generated images.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, many of my constituents in Epping Forest are very worried about proposals to stop terrestrial TV broadcast from 2034. Like with local radio, for many in both urban and rural areas, and for older and more vulnerable people, they rely on terrestrial TV as a lifeline in their daily lives. Please, can the government have a strong rethink about this?
Well, as I've said in previous answers, we do have to manage this transition. We can't just drift into an unmanaged transition. And that's precisely why we've brought these proposals forward early, with genuinely open questions about the date of that transition. But I'll reiterate to him what I said to many honourable members, which is that we are absolutely determined to get on the front foot about this and make sure that nobody is left behind.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm confident that everybody in this House wants freedom of speech, freedom of expression, but we're all against freely available misinformation, disinformation, whether that's about the lack of integration in certain neighbourhoods or whether that's on international footing. There's clearly a distrust, so something needs to be done, and I certainly welcome the Minister, the Secretary of State, in bringing forward a Green Paper. How will the government ensure that those with the deepest pockets don't get prevalent when we look at mainstream media?
One of the things that we're trying to do is to protect the plurality and diversity of our media, and also to make sure that people have better access to high quality sources, not just of news but of content as well, things like children's programming that are really important. But he's right to recognise we've lived through a revolution in media and media consumption, and we just haven't been quick enough to respond, and that's partly what this TV Green Paper is designed to address.
Sure. Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the Green Paper from the Secretary of State? Many of my constituents in Stockland, Bristol and Fiddington continue to endure very poor or non-existent broadband coverage and mobile signals, so they are concerned at her proposals to stop terrestrial broadcasts by 2034. So will she ensure that those proposals do not cut off my constituents in rural areas?
I also represent a largely rural constituency, and I absolutely recognise the challenges that he talks about in relation to not just broadband, but also his right to say mobile signal as well. I can't get reception in my own house, to be honest. So I think there's a real challenge there, but that's precisely why we've brought forward these proposals now with a genuinely open question about 2034 or 2044, so that we can work with industry to ensure that his constituents aren't left behind.
And finally, Jim Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State very much for her answers and for her positivity in the questions that we've all asked. Mine is a very specific one to Northern Ireland, and I think the Honourable Lady, the Secretary of State, will be quite perturbed when I give her some figures for Northern Ireland. With the new media green paper pushing for a total IPTV transition by 2034, what specific guarantees can the Secretary of State give to the nearly half of all households in Northern Ireland, some 370,000 people, whose homes still rely entirely on digital terrestrial TV via an aerial, so that all of our rural and vulnerable communities are not left in a digital blackout as a result of the potential paper proposals? Thanks so much.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. So there are particular challenges in certain parts of the country, and Northern Ireland is very firmly at the forefront of not just my mind, but the Minister for Media as well. I'd be more than happy to discuss it further with him, but we will work together to make sure that nobody is left behind.
And that concludes the urgent question. I'll just give a few moments for the front benches to swap over.
Okay, everyone, I think that's about it today. All right, I've been live for just over 2 hours now, and I'm shattered. Thank you very much, everyone, if you're still watching. Much appreciated, everyone. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll be releasing some shorts. Please go through the short form videos and the other videos that I've released. They are interesting. They've got some good parts to them. All right. Well, okay. Much appreciated. We'll catch you all soon. Keep an eye out. Turn your bell notifications on so you make sure you'll be notified when I put out a new video. Yeah. UTK. Thank you very much, brother. You take care, mate. Everyone, stay cool. Stay safe in this hot weather. Be careful out there, yeah? Yeah. Keep an eye on your pets as well. Make sure, common sense, doesn't it? But thanks for all your support, and we will catch you all soon. All the best.